wizards. So, before we get into this game, let's have a small little conversation. Just bear with me as I go on a little tangent about Prism. So for those of you who are new to this and what I do, my name is Mooner, and this is a completely flesh and blood wizard based channel. So I focus only on wizard. That is my forte. It's the class that I identify with the most. I love wizard. And so what does that have to do with Prism? So for those of you who aren't around, and those of you who are, let's just take a trip back to memory lane. I would say in all of the history of Flesh and Blood, Prism versus Wizard, and I'm going to include Kano and Icelander in this conversation, has probably been one of the most polarized and slanted matchups ever to exist in Prism's favor. It was a matchup that we used to call a lunch matchup or a parking lot matchup, meaning that if you, as a wizard, sat across from a Prism, you were better off just going to get lunch or settling it out in the parking lot. You know, jokes aside, it was a very, very, very terrible matchup. One that inevitably Prism would always win. So, what does that have to do with this game and us now? So when Prism left and she hit Living Legend status, that is when truly that Icelander was able to come out of her shell and truly flourish as a hero. She was completely gate-kept, as was Kano, by the presence of Prism #1 in the meta. It was just such a terrible matchup. So most of us longtime wizard players have a bit of PTSD when it comes to Prism and Luminaris and Spectra and all of the things. It was really bad. It was just a really bad time to be a wizard player. So with Prism being reintroduced in Dusk Till Dawn, coming out in just about a week, I'm sure a lot of you are aware that you can test a lot of the new cards in the open format on Talishar, and this is what I've been doing for the last few days. Ever since everything has been spoiled, I've been actively seeking and trying to test into Prism #2, Prism Awakener of Soul, or Awakener of My Anxiety, as I like to call it. I still have a lot of PTSD from the old Prism, and I wanted to see if it was indeed still as slanted and terrible of a matchup as it used to be. And it's not great. It's not as bad as it used to be, but it's still not good. It's still very, very difficult. And I would say probably one of the hardest matchups for me as a player currently to figure out. But I'm a very tenacious and stubborn son of a bitch, and I don't want to give up on playing Icelander, or Kano for that matter. So I'm determined to figure out this matchup. So what does that have to do with this game here? Well, this is one I've actually had quite a bit of success in beating the Prisms that I've queued into. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that she is pretty much a brand new hero with a brand new card pool, and she's not figured out yet. Excuse me. Sorry about that. But there's just no definitive build yet. The cards aren't even out, you know, so we don't really know what we're facing yet. But I can tell you this, I've played about, I'd say maybe 15 or 16 games into Prism, and surprisingly I do have a winning record. But from what I can tell so far, there are two major archetypes. There is the Herald archetype and there is the Aura archetype. And unfortunately, all the old yellow auras with Spectra still are playable, even though they said they would not print any new cards with the keyword Spectra on them. She still has access to all the old ones, and they are still a bitch. Excuse me, I'm sorry. We still have Genesis, we still have Ode to Wrath, and we still have the worst of them all, in my opinion, Merciful Retribution. And most Prisms are playing some combination of those auras because they are so good. So there are currently two different archetypes floating around, like I said. The Herald favors the new Luminaris, the Luminaris at home weapon, and the Aura Prism build kind of favors the Iris, or this other weird orb thing that she has now. But this is a matchup against a more Herald-based Prism. And there is no way to tell before you queue into them whether they're going to be Herald or Aura, but you can usually tell by the weapon that they bring. And this is an unusual matchup because most of the Prisms that I've faced have not had this much Arcane Barrier. This is the highest amount of Arcane Barrier I've faced into a Prism. Usually they're only running like AB1, maybe the Crown or something like that, but we have AB3 here. And let's just get into the game because there's a lot that I want to go over as we go through this game. So I don't know if it's correct to go first or second in this matchup, but Prism chose. She let me go first, so that leads me to think that it's a matchup where you want to go second because she can just dump her auras out on your turn, while you're going first, and then start the game with like a Genesis or a Merciful already in play, which is not good for anybody. But thankfully, I don't think that happened here. So let's just get into the game. So we start off with a Red Weather Vane into a Polar Cap, and I get to put a Cantrip into Arsenal. I get to put a Cold Snap in Arsenal. And she only has AB3, so she is going to get another Frostbite here. She just dumps most of her hand. And we go into her turn. And I draw into an Icebind, an Encase, which normally Encase would be really good in the Prism. I'm going to pause this. I'm going to pause this a lot just to talk about some things, but Encase would normally be very good into Prism because freezing her hero ability and her equipment is really, really good. Her not being able to activate those kind of things is a huge benefit to us. But maybe she was afraid of Encase, so she brought AB3. I don't know. Either way, AB3 is kind of a hindrance to that. But in all other purposes, Encase is really good into Prism if it hits. So, moving ahead, I'm just going to get rid of this Energy Potion because I need to block. And yeah, one more thing, I'll pause again. The Herald Prism, denying her at all costs, denying her the ability to put Heralds in the Soul and like tutor out a Figment is a huge priority. And I know this deck blocks like shit, but you gotta really prioritize the zero cost spells because you're gonna need to block these Heralds in as much as you can. So this deck might need to be completely rebuilt because of this hero. That's how polarizing she is, that I might have to completely rebuild this deck. And there are a couple other points that I will pause and talk about. But first of all, making sure that these Heralds don't get into her soul is a huge priority. So she still is attacking with one. She was able to pay through those Frostbites, and I'm just going to block this out, keep this in case, and keep this this Polar Blast and deny her that. So she doesn't have an arsenal, and I don't imagine her letting this hit, obviously. And I'm not really sure, with the Herald builds, sorry, to pause it one more time. I'm sorry, just bear with me, because there's a lot to explain about this matchup. Against the Herald builds, you want to be running some kind of defensive arm piece. You want to have your Ironhide gauntlets, and that's mostly because you need to block erudition. So Coronet Peak is only in this matchup to block erudition, and I didn't know that this was going to be a Herald build, so I was generally wearing Node because Metacarpus Node is desperately needed against the Aura build. So I kind of fucked up there, but moving forward again, sorry. So here I draw into pretty good hand. I want to get a hex down on her, and here comes that Herald of Erudition. So I'm obviously going to chuck my helmet in front, and I'm going to put this Ice Eternal in front of it as well, and I get the Mooner and get a little bit of damage through. She gets to take 3 here, and I get to block this out, and I get to still hold on to a red Aether Ice Vein, and I get to put a hex down. So far so good. Like, this is about as good as it can get so far. We'll see how much she decides to AB of this, but her 2-card hands are still extremely devastating. So stripping cards from her hand really doesn't, I mean, it matters, but like you saw, she just still can throw a Herald. And let me pause it one more time. So those of you who are familiar with me and what I do, I don't run any poppers except for Nourishing Emptiness into Jerome Eye. Against Prism, this is not an option. We need to run poppers into her, and I think in order to not fuck with our ratios and our fluidity of our deck, in the core of what our strategy is and wants to do, I think 4 is the maximum number we need to be on. And as you can see here, I have 2 Amnesia in the list. Well, I have 3 obviously, and I'm running Nourishing Emptiness. But she's attacking me with a Herald of Triumph, and this is that Herald that makes all of your attack actions have 1 less attack, so they only come in for 5 instead of 6, so they don't pop Phantasm. And this has been a trend that I've seen almost every single Prism that I've gone up against. They're both running Herald of Erudition, and they are also running Herald of Triumph, both in the red and the yellow. And I think this is because they are wise to poppers, and they know that a lot of decks are going to be running a lot of poppers, and this is one way to get around that. So I am stuck here with 2 cards that should pop, but do not pop Heralds or Phantasm in this instance. So, all that to say, Amnesia, although it is very good if you attack Prism with it, if you attack Prism with Amnesia, it is going to take away the keyword Herald, take away names, and that is important because if a card named Herald doesn't go into her soul, or she can't activate her weapon because the name Herald, so that is hugely important. So that's why I chose to run Amnesia. But there's so many of these Heralds of Triumph, and the Figment of Triumph, and also Parable of Humility is a thing. So all that to say that we need to run poppers that have at least 7 attack, and there are very few of them in the game. In fact, there's like Fendel's Fighting Spirit, there's Raging Onslaught Red, but Fendel's Fighting Spirit at least will gain us a life, and the life gain in this matchup is very, very important. So moving forward, I will not be running the Amnesia, although it is really good to attack Prism with. We don't get that kind of we don't get that kind of like opportunity where there's not enough pressure. She's pressuring us so much in this matchup that we don't really get opportunities to attack with these poppers. I'd much rather hit her with a Ice Vein or something like that, and put Frostbites on her. So moving forward, Fendel's Fighting Spirit Red will probably be in the list. And let's just move on with this game. Sorry. So I put the Hex down on her, and I try to stem a little bit of this damage, even though it's going to go to her soul. But then I can pitch this other useless card to Waning Moon using my Tunic counter and get a little bit more damage on her. But she is going to get a Figment, and that's always bad news for me. So this is a classic example of why 6 attack poppers are not the answer moving forward. But then I put a red Ice Vein in the arsenal, and she takes the damage from the Frost Hex. And I have hopefully a couple cards to block whatever she throws at me next. So, but she does have a full grip here. And here comes another Herald. And this one's going to hit. I have no choice but to let it hit. But I think about it long and hard because it is coming in for 7. I can't block it with 2 cards, so it's just not going to happen. So she activates Luminaris to give it go again, and this is where I'm going to Blizzard and try to prevent her from getting that go again. And she obviously has the resources to pay through it. So there is that. And I take some arcane damage there. This goes to soul. And she's already starting to build up her soul, which is not good. This is not where we want to be. This is when the game starts quickly spiraling out of control, when she's able to build up her soul and tutor out these Figments. And as long as she can't, well, she did. She was able to transform one and attack with it. And yeah, it's all bad news because I'm going to attack her with this. Well, first I'm going to strip a card with Winter's Bite, and then I'm going to attack her with this red Ice Vein, and it's just going to get absorbed by this Figment, by this Ward. Ward is just here to soak up all the damage. So it becomes, once she starts tutoring out these Figments and transforming them into angels, it becomes increasingly difficult to get any kind of damage through. You end up just playing this game where you're constantly just killing these angels with your spells, and they're soaking up all this damage, and she's just returning volley back with big heralds that we can't block or pop. So it's just, and here comes another erudition, and I don't have the appropriate equipment to block it, so I have no choice but to let it hit and just try to get some damage through and kill off this angel and make sure that she can't give it go again, so that even though it does hit, it's not going to get go again. And it's just, she's just going to draw 2 cards, just like 2 Ponder kind of thing. But it's just her drawing 2 cards at this point, which is still a bummer because she gets 1 for Arsenal, and she possibly has enough resources to transform this new Figment that she just tutored up, which is just all bad news. Herald of Erudition is still just a nightmare, even without old Luminaris. I'm going to pause it again for just a second after we go into my turn here. So she's going to use her hero ability, banish that Herald, and rinse, repeat. And it just, I'm down to 14. So here I choose to play out this Channel Lake Frigid instead of this Frost Hex. And I'm not sure that this was the best move or the best play on my part. I think maybe should have played out this Frost Hex, because so far I haven't seen a Merciful Retribution come down, and killing her with Frost Hex might be my only way out, or at least being able to hit her with a big enough freezing point, and every Frost Hex is just another damage from freezing point. But she has a full grip of cards here, and I want to try, and her actions, her hero ability, her heralds, everything, she is very resource hungry, but she does run a lot of blues and yellows. This deck is mostly blues and yellows with like some red heralds that she's using to attack with. So I'm not sure that Channel Lake Frigid was the best move right now, but I definitely wanted to put this Weather Vane in the arsenal because I do have a Hex out on her. But I think I should have played the other Hex because, as you'll see moving forward, the channel really doesn't slow her down a whole lot. And I just Waning Moon every single chance I can to just try to just get rid of as much spectral shields and ward as you possibly can, because even a Waning Moon for 2 will still kill a ward 4. But like, as you can see, she still has the blue to attack with this big ass Herald, and I think I would have just been better off playing that Hex because I drew into a freezing point, and I think I would have prioritized the damage. But I still get to throw 10 back at her. And she only has AB3, and she doesn't have any ward currently. So she is going to take at least 7 of this, unless she, but she takes it all. So, and I get stuck putting a blue Weather Vane in the arsenal, but she can still, as you can see, she can just pay through all these Frostbites with ease. I mean, she just has so many resources at her disposal here, and it's just Herald after Herald after Herald. And this is another Herald of Triumph, so even if I did have a Pauper, it wouldn't matter. And I'm just thinking, like long and hard, if I should play out this Weather Vane just to give her the Frostbite, but I decided not to. She reverts the turn for some reason. I guess she wanted to pitch differently. But I just block a little bit of this because I want to Winter's Bite her. I want to put this blue Weather Vane on her. She still doesn't have any ward currently. She hasn't transformed any of these figments yet for some reason. But I'm down to 3, and she's, got a significant life lead ahead of me right now, so I just need to stay alive. She goes down to 11. And I think she ends up taking this damage, which is good because she can't do shenanigans, but she can still just plow the shit out of me with a War Tune Herald. And this is one that I can block and I want to block, so this is a good reason why prioritizing the yellow cost spells, because I can still, and I also threw away another Hex there, which, as you'll see, come to the end of the game, I really wish I would have played that Hex. It would have made my math a lot easier. But for some reason, I don't know why I'm prioritizing Channel Lake Frigid. I know it's not doing enough. Play the Channel Lake Frigid. no, I have to live this turn. So I have to block this out. I reverted the turn because I realized that I'm at 3 life and I actually have to live. So she doesn't have any angels, so she has no reason to give this Herald go again. So I just have to prevent this Herald from going into her soul, so she tutors up any more figments. Because even when those figments hit the battlefield, they represent like detrimental bullshit. So I just block this out, and then I'm gonna play the Channel Lake Frigid, try to slow her down a little bit more, although maybe I should have played the Insidious Chill instead. I don't know. But here we go. I draw into another useless popper because Herald of Triumph, like I said, it's either been Herald of Erudition or Herald of Triumph. So these 6 attack poppers are absolutely useless. Here I go, just trying to force through as much damage as I can, get her to strip her hand. And I have to block this out, and unfortunately I have to block out with 2 cards. And it doesn't really matter because I don't have an ice card to fuse this Ice Fane with anyways. So what I'm going to do is block with this useless Amnesia. As you can see, I've been on the defense the entire time. And that's kind of how all these games go. You just kind of got to just... And then I'm going to put this Ice Eternal into Arsenal, and hopefully this is where I really wish I had more hexes down. I wish I would have prioritized playing those 2 hexes instead of playing those Channel Lake Frigids, because those Channel Lake Frigids really didn't do me much. But here we go. This is the last turn of the game. And I'm going to pause this for a second because I guess I don't need to pause it because I do go into tank quite a bit. But this is the last turn of the game, and I'm at 3 and she's at 7, and she doesn't have any ward currently, so she only has Arcane Barrier 3, and she's throwing a Herald, a War Tune Herald at me, and she has currently 1 resource at her disposal and 2 cards in hand. Now I have a Frost Hex out, I have an Ice Eternal in Arsenal, 3 blues, 1 of them being ice, well 2 of them being ice, so that does matter, and a freezing point. So all told, if I play this correctly, and I tank on this turn for quite a while, as you'll see, and also I tank so long that the client ends up freezing and I have to like refresh. You'll see in a minute. But I'm trying to find a way that I can honestly kill her. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to activate my Storm Striders first, but I'm not going to let it resolve. I'm going to pitch this heart, I'm going to gain a life, and I'm going to have 2 resources floating. And I'm not going to let the Storm Striders resolve, and I'm going to play out this Ice Eternal for 2, giving her 1 Frostbite. And unfortunately, I don't have enough to Metacarpus the Ice Eternal, but the plan is to hold priority, play this Ice Eternal, X equals 1, two resources pumped into it, fuse it, and then play this freezing point after I let Stormstriders resolve. I will have enough resources to fuse it and pump 1 into Metacarpus node. So having 1 Hex out, 1 Frostbite created from the Ice Eternal, and 1 pump from Metacarpus, it's going to come in for 8, and then I can Waning Moon for 3, and then the 1 damage from the Ice Eternal itself. So 12 damage total. And what she's going to do is try to transform some of these Figments into Ward. And she's going to be able to soak up 4 of that damage. And I believe one of the Figments also creates a Soul Shield, if I'm not mistaken. Or she's able to AB some of it. But this is where like it freezes up, the client freezes up, and I already have figured out my plan. I know what I'm going to do. I have exactly enough resources to deal her a total of 12 damage. And if she transforms one of these Figments into Ward 4, and as long as that last card in her hand is a red that she can AB with, I can deal her 12 damage and kill her. So I have to refresh here. And it is a red, so she dumps all her resources into transforming a Figment and ABing. Or creating a Spectral Shield, I believe. And I'm able to, I think I accidentally hit yes on Metacarpus node, but I don't want a Metacarpus node this, I want a Metacarpus node the freezing point. I guess it didn't matter. Either one of them would have been fine. But it could matter because of the ward thing. But so this eats up the ward, I believe. And then I let Storm Striders resolve. I play my freezing point. I Metacarpus node it. It's going to come in for 8. The ward is going to soak up 4 of it. So the client freezes here, I believe. Yeah, I have to. So ward soaks up 4 of it, and I have enough resources left to Waning Moon her for 3 to finish it off. But as you can see, like that instant speed ward, I mean, it's crazy. And so what have we learned? We learned that like 6 powered poppers just are not the move. And I'm like I'm rebuilding the entire deck. There are a couple things that, I mean, Prism is so, she's just so polarizingly powerful that you have to like build your deck completely around her, and I don't like that about this matchup at all. But it is what it is. She's back, and we're gonna have to figure out a way to beat her. But luckily, it's not as bad as the old Prism was. But in some ways it still is. I mean, there are still those auras out there that make the Frost-Hex plan completely a bad idea. I mean, Merciful Retribution. If you were around for dying to your own Frostbites, or if you have no idea what I'm talking about, you'll see it. I'll make sure to record a game. But thanks for watching, Wizards. Hopefully, you got some enjoyment out of this at the very least. Like, subscribe, comment, blah, blah, blah. Peace out, wizards.